Today I'm making Furiosa's robot arm, and I'm going to show you how, step by step. Witness me!
Oh geez, I'm right here. What's wrong with you?
I just discovered energy drinks!
Well, as long as you're not huffing cake frosting.
No promises. For this build, I used craft foam, silver rub and buff, PVC pipe, PVC cutter, paint, super glue, hot glue, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. First, we're going to need to go through the movie and watch for shots of it from every angle in order to get the details right. And it turns out I actually have all the parts that this arm is made of. It's not terribly sophisticated. Yeah, it's bike brakes and vice grips, but I like my vice grips. They're useful. And also, the ability to stop a bicycle might come in handy. So instead of breaking a bunch of my tools, I'm going to be recreating most of these parts out of craft foam. This is also a lot safer than using metal. Safer for the actor, I mean. My hands are basically just calluses at this point. But when building something for somebody else, you gotta take every precaution against burrs. Little bits of metal that stick up from where it's been cut into. It may seem like an insignificant thing. I mean, they're about the size of the pointed end of a pin, but that's kind of just it. A metal burr can scratch an actor's face, and their face is their job. And if you're the one who puts a single imperfection on the face of Anya Taylor-Joy, then you don't get fired, you don't get sued, you get of mice and men. Gary Sinise takes you out by the river and puts you down. And then you get buried way out in the Hollywood Hills. Because hers is the face that launched 1,000 clicks.
You're proud of that line, aren't you?
You know it. Modern day Hemingway right here. They don't call me William Shakespeare for nothing.
Ouch.
Oh no, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
Who?
Who do you think? Gary Sinise! Run for it, Mika! Another reason to build out of foam instead of metal is heavy. Not that I'm implying that she can't lift it, but what nobody seems to think about the filming of any scene is that the actors are usually doing at least a dozen takes from every single angle. So like next time you watch any show, count how many different angles there are and multiply that by at least a dozen. It's a workout. They're doing the same action over and over and over again. It can be tiring even if it's just talking heads. And these are action movies. The hand actually has 4 fingers, not 5, so we're doing Simpsons rules here. The main finger, the middle one, is part of, I don't know, like a Kim Possible grappling hook, which I actually don't have lying around. Wow, they found one. They finally found a random piece of junk that I don't have squirreled away somewhere. Am I a hoarder? Nah, you good. So I had to figure this out on cardboard first, so that I don't ruin the foam with guesswork. The index finger is more traditionally finger-shaped, so that'll be a little bit easier than the main one with all its sharp angles. Although the scissors did come in handy for the individual teeth. So you don't need to use razor pens if you don't have to. I used a strip of 4mm foam to make the outer wall of the main finger. I glued it in with super glue. There's a close-up for demo, so the black foam doesn't always show up real well on camera, although I find that it helps for painting, so that's why I tend to use it. This is a bit too small for my sausage fingers to fit. Luckily, it'll be fine for the actor. Always scale to your actor. So I closed it up. The index finger, however, being a little bit smaller, will need more room on the inside than the previous one, so rather than using the 4mm thick foam walls, I'd go with 2mm wrapped around the exterior. This plays into the texture of the finger. It has a tread on the outside, sort of implying that it's a leftover rubber grip. I think it's actually a fan belt. So I made that tread from smaller strips of 2mm and glued them on one by one. Now again, I do have this rubber tread pattern around here somewhere, but even rubber adds weight. The point is to find the sweet spot between comfort and durability. Okay, so the pinky finger is actually the thumb of an old leather work glove, which I happen to already be using for the palm to help with flexibility. I don't know where the cutoff fingers went though. See, this is why I don't throw anything away. This is the explanation for the hoarding right here. This is taking time and therefore money because I threw away random bits of leather 7 years ago. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. So, guess I'm just gonna have to make that out of foam as well. Again, 4 and 2mm, and I rounded the edges with a rotary tool once it was together, and slipped it over the last 2 fingers to make a giant pinky. Now for the thumb. I don't want to destroy the vice grips, but I can still use them to trace from. The thumb is actually made from 2 vice grip lower jaws, with a panel in between them, connecting them, to make them wide enough to hide Charlize Theron's thumb, Charlize Theron thumb, or Anya's, depending on what movie you're watching. So I built up more walls just like I did on the previous finger. Next, for the teeth, it seems like that would be tricky to recreate out of foam, but it's really not. I just use these triangular strips left over from when I cut off the edges of larger pieces of foam that needed to be sanded into a rounded shape. I was trying to cut down on the dust the sander was going to kick up. And of course I saved them because hoarding, we've established this. Now, they're good for robot hair, and I want to take another stab at the braid on the Atomic Heart robot. I think I can make that more intricate. Not that I wasn't trying my best the first time. Once all the fingers were made, I glued them to the glove with hot glue, taking extra care not to burn myself. I'm also using metal blocks with scissors to speed up the cooldown time and control how the glue spreads as it blobs out. Sometimes hot glue blobs can look like solder or a TIG weld after the painting process, which actually works with the Fury Road theme, but you really don't want to go overboard. See, it's kind of a gamble. I added a rounded foam piece to the tops of the fingers, partially for the shape, but also for another attachment point. I don't want this thing coming apart. Then I wrapped the glove in 2mm strips to cover the leather. It's easier to make segments of foam pieces look like metal than it is to make leather look like metal. It's supposed to look like tin that's been hammered and riveted into the shape of a hand. Sort of like a less sophisticated version of Ash's robot hand from Army of Darkness, or a more sophisticated version of Goats of the Iron Hand. No idea if I'm pronouncing that right. So after the glue set on the panels, I added foam circles as rivets. Some of these are foam dowels that I've cut into slices like salami. Others are hole punch-outs, which I'll get to in more detail in a minute if I haven't already. I'm not actually sure what's happening on screen while I narrate this. I'm kind of winging this one, as if we had a few setbacks in the scripting process. Now this glove is large, it's way too big for the actor, so I added a strap around the wrist. So next, for those perforated panels on top of the fingers, I'm going to use some actual metal. I salvaged this screen out of the back of an old television cabinet. I mean, like really old. Like Philco, and I cut out sections with tin snips. I shaped the individual panels and fixed them to the outer facing sides of the fingers, first with hot glue and then tacks, upholstery tacks. I don't trust hot glue alone to hold the metal in place. I mean, it's probably fine because it's oozing through the holes and then solidifying, sort of forming its own rivet, but I just want to double up with tacks. Now, it does mean that I got to be aware of where the pointed ends are angled so that they're not felt by the actor on the inside of the glove, but that's not really an issue. It doesn't make my job any harder, you know? What else am I going to use these for? Not like I'm upholstering sofas. Watch as the hot new thing is killer sofa. Deathbed. Oh wait, Deathbed 2! The upholstering! The furniture fights back. We discover their weakness. It's cats. Or ferrets. Once had a ferret eat a sofa. Alright, robot hands. The thumb's the easiest one because it's not rounded like the other fingers. The others, I needed to planish even further using a pipe and vice grips. You see, this is why I didn't want to wreck them. This right here. These tools are handy. Don't mess up good tools on purpose. Once those were on, I added the adapter covers that the hoses will feed into. I swear one's an upturned electric guitar jack, but I like my electric guitar. Also, I have no idea where anything is right now. It took me 2 hours to find this microphone. Okay, so they're sort of implying that one of the pneumatic hoses is being held in with this shoelace that's just been threaded all through this panel, but I didn't want to try that with foam. It would just deform it too much. So instead, I used a foam dowel, a very thin foam dowel, like the thinnest I could find. But I cut a bunch of little tiny sections and glued those on to simulate the look of a threaded lace, and then took a regular old hole punch and cut a single hole to run the shoelace through that. And that gets zip tied down to the other parts of the arm, just so it's not actually putting any stress on the foam. Then I made the control rods out of 4mm foam, although I think 2 would also work, just in retrospect. And then I made some of the pinky details, which for some reason are broken. They're more broken tools. Like, I get it, she should have them if they come in handy in that world, but I can't really see a situation where it's useful to have a broken wrench on the end of your pinky. You know what I mean? Again, I don't want to wreck my tools, so I made some foam duplicates. You know, I keep saying that, but I have at least half a dozen of these wrench sets. So what am I saving them for? I punched out the center of that with a leather hole punch. This is another way that I get excess foam circles. See, I knew I'd get to it. Just be careful when doing this because it takes a lot of force to punch through and you don't want to have an accident. Yep, there we go. It's nestled together amongst the other drill bits. I actually had a ton of extra drill bits, but that adds up to a lot of weight. So I rebuilt those out of wood and foam. Time to paint. I like to use gloss black paint as a base coat when making metallic props. It's cheaper than other alternatives like Plastidip, and it's less toxic. When they're made out of foam, I usually need to do 3 layers before applying the metal top coat. I painted some of these parts separately for convenience. So glad there's a sequel with this character, because I wanted to build this prop when Fury Road came out, but was too busy at the time. Plus, I don't even think I had a Patreon when that movie came out. Speaking of, I want to take a moment to thank all the patrons for supporting these videos, including newcomers, Chris F, Tara R, and 188. I think that's how you pronounce that, MNS 188, who may or may not be a droid. It's been very difficult to produce content these past few months. As you can probably tell, this is not the typical shop setup. The shop is in a state of flux right now, but the support of the patrons was able to make this video possible. Then I stuck them upright in a piece of styrofoam to dry. And then hotbox them in an attic so that they dry faster because I'm impatient. When they dried, I did a top coat of Rub and Buff wax metallic finish. This is a little less shiny and reflective than just straight silver, which fits the franchise because, it's a wasteland, not a lot of polish in the apocalypse. But the practical reason for this is that the more reflective something is, the more likely you're going to get a reflection of the green screen on the prop, which will create little holes on the prop once you replace the background. So yeah, trying to make my life easy later on. It's literally the difference between a post effect taking 2 minutes and 2 days. That'll dry pretty quickly, but in the meantime, I'm gonna make an elbow pad out of craft foam. It's basically the same as making a shoulder pad. Just trace a pattern onto foam, cut it out with a razor pen, sand off any imperfections on the belt sander, and then heat form it. I skewered it while doing this because it gets hot. Next, I heat formed the pieces using my heat gun. When it was sufficiently heated up, I pressed it over half of a giant novelty Easter egg that I'm using as a planishing iron, or anvil, to help shape the foam into a curved piece. Then I added some 2mm craft foam to the interior and a heat-formed bevel on top of that. This is going to create a little trench that a strap can nestle into to keep it secure. Then I made more rivets with a hole punch and then glued them on. There's a gauge on there, which looks like they ripped it off of a fire extinguisher, but again, I might need that. If you don't store all these props correctly, then some of my props might be a little bit of a fire hazard. So I made one out of scrap PVC pipe and a Maglite lens, as well as different colored foam for the increment reading. I glued those on and moved up to the arm muscles. They look like furniture pneumatics, but I'm gonna make them out of PVC pipe. I cut some scrap pipe into 3 sections using a pipe cutter. They're about 8 inches each, but that will vary from person to person. I think Charlize Theron's taller than Anya Taylor-Joy, so they probably had to scale it down a bit. Screen accuracy is a trap. You will lose your mind if you go for accuracy. There's no such thing. Since these will be right up against the green screen element, there's a high probability of spill, green screen spill. So instead of a shiny reflective paint, I'm just going to wrap them in duct tape. Then I found a thin foam dowel that fits snugly inside to both simulate the piston look while providing a mounting point for the connectors to the glove. Pivot knobs, let's call them pivot knobs. I added those to the ends and then attached them to the elbow pad, like so. Real quick, I did put some brass buff on those rivets. There's far less detail on the elbow pad. In the movies, one of these rods is broken and then taped back together with a bent wrench. So I need to make another duplicate, grabbed a sheet of 4mm foam, traced the wrench onto it. And no, I'm not actually going to break the PVC. This is just decorative. Then I cut it out, following my trace line with a steel bar as a straight edge. It's like a combination straight edge and weight, which is helpful because foam this thin can flex while you're cutting it if it's not held in place. I'm also sharpening the blade as I go. That's WD-40, by the way, an absolute essential to any prop maker, and let's be honest, friends of prop makers. And then I drilled a hole in it. I also sanded the edges to make it more rounded like the original wrench. And of course, I had to paint that as well, and buffed it. Finally, I buffed the hand itself. You don't want to go overboard in this. This is for weathering, not polishing. Basically, any edge that could get scratched in day-to-day use should be metallic, and any groove that would be protected from wear and tear should be black to represent dirt and or grease buildup. I used brass polish for the pinky. Then I added tools to it. Next, I added the rods to the thumb and index finger. After that, I added springs to the bars. These I'm not going to try recreating out of foam. That would be way too labor intensive, which defeats the purpose. These springs were harvested from the desk lamp of an unsuspecting colleague.
I knew it!
Yeah. Do I have to blur that? Does that count? I mean, it's not even a human hand because there's there's not that many fingers. I don't know. Let's see.
That's
Let's see if we get demonetized for that one. I'll take that risk. These are meant to look functional, but they're for show. In reality, they don't exert any force on the fingers whatsoever that would interfere with the actor's regular muscle power. Next, I added flexible tubes and cables to imply external artificial muscle control for the fingers. I tied those together in order to make them less cumbersome to wear. Then I inserted the guide rods into the pistons, and I used zip ties to attach the wrench, and that's it for the wearable portion. To get the complete effect, the actor wears a green glove underneath all this, which is then removed and replaced with what I believe is a clutch.
Pardon me.
Here's a simple demonstration. I mean, it would be easier to just cast an amputee.
Nope.
But I gave you so much multicolored money.
Not that much.
But it's not like you're using it. It's not like you're a hand model. Okay, I guess that's not happening, so I guess we're just going to do the effect. Now for cosplayers, a practical way of doing it is to wear a black latex glove, or spandex, I don't know, it looks shiny, left over from a xenomorph costume, which you should all have if you've followed the channel for a while. I have a couple at this point. This one's just for spare parts now. After somebody shot it with a harpoon, the shininess of the fabric should make it look like a greasy pneumatic, which goes in line with the whole engine parts thing. Silver is also an option for cosplayers, but again, for me, that would cause reflections with green screen. And that's it. That's how to make Furiosa's robot arm. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, I'd like to thank my patrons. These videos just wouldn't be possible without the support of my patrons. So if you enjoy these builds, want to see more of them, and want your build request to carry a bit more weight, then think about heading on over to the Patreon page, where you can enjoy ad-free early uploads. Anything you can pledge goes towards improving the video quality and shop equipment, as well as allowing me to put together bigger and more exciting projects for you on the channel. Alright, hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified of the future uploads, because it's kind of at a totally random schedule. And let me know what other props you'd like to see me make in comments down below. Thanks again, happy crafting, see you later.
Rolling?
Yep.
Okay, you have at least a couple where I'm not flipping off the camera.
That's great.
That was fun.
The shoelace whipped me into live. That was fantastic.
Sorry. It gave you a good reaction though.
Yeah, it was great.
It actually has like surprisingly good grip.
Oh, whoops. It's
fine, you can blur it.
No, it's great. It'll be like the Cerveza Cristal.
Yeah.